Hi, I'm Amy from Trees Not Teas. We give runners the option of turning down a finisher's tee at the end of a race and planting a tree instead. Today, I'm very happy to be talking to Nick Kershaw, who is the founder of the Impact Marathon series. Hi, Nick.
Hey there, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much for talking to us.
No problem.
We have a specific reason for wanting to talk to you because we are just heading into the Impact Marathon Scotland, which is also very exciting for us here at Trees Not Teas because we are partnering with you for this event, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's been an amazing journey with you so far.
Oh, that's great. So the event is on the 29th of April to the 2nd of May, right?
That's
so
right.
Can you please tell us what people can expect from the Impact Marathon Scotland?
So everything with Impact Marathon has always been about, okay, we're uniting runners to get to know and get to understand and get to engage with the impact that we have as individuals. So that every race we ever do, there's always an element of whether it's volunteering, whether it's learning, whether it's engaging with where your fundraising is going. So there's always that element of first, we engage with the community, we engage with the project, we engage with the area where we're running. And secondly, we just go out there and run together. And the spirit of the race is very uncompetitive, very much about going out there, enjoying it. We design courses where you can't get a PB, even if well, unless it's your first time doing that distance. And then you're guaranteed a PB probably next time you do that distance. And so what we're doing is on the Future Forests set up over on the Isle of Mull, we will be building a sort of a pop-up athletes village, and we'll be spending some time there working with the different people from within the organization who are instigating the work that Future Forest is building on the estate, in the Glen Aris estate, which is an extraordinary. Have you been out to the Glen?
Sadly not, because ever since we sort of started, it's basically been in lockdown, but it's on the cards, hopefully.
It's on the cards, probably on the 29th of April. I mean,
well, that would be amazing.
So, there's so many different things going on the estate. And I think one of the elements that I guess inspired it, if I can go back to the start of what inspired it, because I think that tells the story of what we're going to be doing, was, more and more races. I mean, how many races is it now that are signed up to work with Trees Not Teas?
We're somewhere around the 140, 150 mark. They kind of get added every day by Chris.
It's amazing. Chris is a monster on this. Yeah. So 140 races over the next year. You're going to have that option to plant a tree or have a tee that you may or may not. Some people want the tee. It's a big deal, and that's okay. Yeah. But if you already have enough tees, and you can make that's a really small little change to the checkout, and it's one button that you need to click, and then it has an impact. And I've always got excited, and the reason the kind of Impact Marathon started was those small things that we can do in their lives that have this exponential impact. Yeah. And what I wanted to do, and what excited me here, was this chance to tell runners and engage with runners, like, when you make that decision, this is what happens. Brilliant. And I guess what I hadn't necessarily realized when I first started talking to Chris was the depth and the level to which the whole organization and vision and dream is. And what's happening on the estate is not as simple as, cool, we are planting trees, pat on the back. And we wanted to bring that alive, right? That decision there is not just, cool, I planted a tree. It's about the ecosystem on Mull. It's about peatland restoration. It's around all of the different things that make up holistic land management. Absolutely. Which it always sounds gently unsexy, but it is like phenomenally exciting.
Yeah, that is great. Yeah, no, you're right, because that means you're giving runners the opportunity to really see this process right through the whole way. That's
exactly
fantastic.
That. So on the Friday night, we'll start off with a bit more information overview, what you're going to be doing. We like to keep what happens on the Saturday a bit of surprise. Okay. Partly because it's just more fun. You can Google everything these days, right? So you can, if you're going to go to Mull, you can Google Mull. I like to have something where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. And also, usually, because we work in all our races with a partner organization, I don't really fully, I'm in the boat alongside you, and I think that's part of the fun of this, is like Trees Not Teas, and Future Forests get their chance to tell their story and bring their story alive in their words, on their land. And so they're devising a number of different things that will go on around the estate. Some of it will be hands-on, some of it will be learning, Just and then we're just going to see kind of, and also I think as well being really open with the challenges. I think that's something that both organizations are really happy to talk about in terms of, if we plant trees all the way through the estate, well, that changes the ability to have a sustainable farm within that. So how do you incorporate the need to plant trees with responsibly doing it, but also with having a working sustainable piece of land, which is what safeguards those trees in the future. So it's that kind of
not always straightforward, is it?
No, and we want to get to that. I don't know whether we can get to that kind of level of discussion in one day, but we're going to give it a good go.
Give it a go.
And then we'll camp out, and then the next day we've got 10 kilometer, 21, 42 kilometer trail races that go out through the morning. And then
they're going to be stunning.
Yes, yeah. I mean, just the first couple of kilometers as you leave, you cross over the Glen Aris estate. It's stunning. I think as well, when we designed the course, we wanted to show a few different elements. So you like, where I believe when you're designing a course, you need to think about it from the perspective of the story it tells, and it has to fit in with the story that was told yesterday. So how do we tell that story? Well, we're going to go through a number of, along the way, we're going to go through different estates. We're going to go through different levels of regenerative agriculture. We're going to go through a different, that story will be told. And so the race briefing is not just about safety and security. It's like, hey, watch out for that, because that's quite cool. And that story. And then, the far end of the 42K is deep inside Benmore estate. And you're just sort of skirting, you won't go up to the summit of Benmore, but we've got a very cool loop around and a house that looks like the Skyfall house that I may just have some music playing there all day, or just Adele on repeat. I think that would be awesome.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that sounds absolutely amazing, and I do wish I was going. So you've sort of touched on this a little bit already. So Impact Marathons was obviously conceived with an extra element, basically, to your usual kind of race organization. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about the impact, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it started really. I mean, it all started kind of as a joke, as the best things do, and it literally is a joke. In fact, I was doing a fundraising for some projects I was supporting in Uganda, and I was at your classic London fundraising do. People had wine and champagne in their hands, and I'd obviously had a couple too many. And I, in this speech, said, I don't want, like, when you donate to a project, we put the credit card away. We donate when someone's sponsoring London Marathon, right? We put the credit card away. That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
And I think that should be the beginning of the journey with that organization, because that money goes somewhere. It has amazing values. It also faces challenges, and some of it may go on projects that never quite work, and that's okay. We can't expect every organization to be perfect in their implementation, right? So that journey, I wanted to bring people on. So I just said, when you do, you've got to come out and visit, and when you do, we're going to run a marathon. And then I thought nothing else of it. At the end, people started asking me about that. Right. And then 6 weeks later, we launched the Uganda Marathon. And then from there, like, the energy, it just turned out that when we said that, instead of having 10 people come out to our project, which we'd had the year before, suddenly 67 people came out, and we raised almost £100,000. And then that whole week of, okay, cool, well, we're going to take you to different projects. And, Street Child have been doing an amazing job doing this in Sierra Leone as well. And really bringing in, okay, if we're going to travel, there has to be a purpose and a goal to it. That's a whole different discussion around the future of what travel can and should be, and the future of what charity trips should be. But the important thing is that if we that we really want to engage people with where they're running, because I think I think it started for me. I ran the Athens Marathon. My first marathon was the Athens Marathon. I wanted to run where my grandma had grown up in Athens. So she, I'm Greek, and I thought that's the perfect place to run. And in the end, we got there so late. My relatives had to go and get to the expo to pick up our numbers. We ran. We grabbed a kebab. We jumped on the subway. We got back, and we came home. We were in the office the next day, and that was kind of awesome in its own way. But now looking back, there's the travel element that I'm uncomfortable with, and then there's the fact that we never really engaged with where we were running. And then and then a few, about 6 months later, I did the Pyongyang Marathon over in North Korea, and that was where I saw it in a totally different way. Of, as we were running, it's a 4-lap course, right? And on the first lap, the kids are hiding behind their parents and they're quite nervous and it's quite there. By the fourth lap, the kids are high-fiving you, they're running beside you, they're, giving you bananas, and it's like that element of running that unites, that it doesn't matter about any preconceptions you have about someone. When you see someone suffering, or you see someone struggling, there is a human spirit that, so it's combining those two elements of those two experiences of, okay, how do you make travel and if we're going to fly to races, we're going to go to races, how do we make that more powerful? And on the other side of, okay, cool, well, how do we use the running actually within the community as well to engage the community in which we're running with what's going on? Because it's not, it's not, London is this sort of beautiful anomaly of major cities, and you get these big races, but actually when we're running trails in Mull, or when we're running trails wherever, it's a different energy, and I think the community wants to be more involved.
Definitely. Something that you mentioned to me when we were just chatting before, which I thought was very interesting, is when you are now running these races in other countries, you're getting very high levels of participation from people who are from that country, which to my knowledge is fairly unusual in these kind of international races.
I think specifically within trail running, and the international races within trail running, you're right. And I think there's a number of different reasons for that. And when we first started, it just seemed obvious that that's what we'd want to do to make it a more energized event. And interestingly, each running community has similarities and differences. And so if you look at the race we just did in Guatemala, the trail running community of Guatemala has just taken this race to heart, and they really support it, they really back it. But also, one of our big passions is getting people into trail running for the first time. And so if you look at Guatemala, again, I use Guatemala's most recent example, there's a number of barriers to entry. There's obviously the costs. We all know that trail running kit is not cheap. There's just the knowledge and understanding that this is a thing, that you can go that distance, which is still a thing that we're learning in the UK market.
Yeah, definitely.
So 5K on trail is very different to 10K on that, and it's just that. And then there's the element of security. And so, by way of example, my fiance, I won't tell her exactly her age, but she's not far off my age. She ran her first time outside when she came to visit me in Wales.
Wow.
She'd never run outside. She'd only ever run on the treadmill. And so, that's a barrier. You can't easily run as a girl on your own in Guatemala or in Guatemala City. So it's like, okay, how do we get more women safely running? And how do we get more people understanding that trail running is a thing and you can do it? And that's kind of why I think we've ended up building the race out. And I think because we've got this other element of, when you come run this race, you're supporting these projects and supporting this community, and this is what's going on. And the internationals, obviously, they do bring a heck of a lot of fundraising normally. And so that really kind of elevates what we can show as the impact of the event. I would love to get more local fundraising. That's the big goal. But 6 years in, I'm still like, if anyone's got ideas on this, I'm all in, because it's tough. It's not easy. It's just different cultures on that. But it does mean that people are inspired, because they know that by being part of this event, that it is having an impact in the communities, and it is having that story. And that's kind of how we've managed to do it. But then there's other countries where it's not so easy to do that. So we're kind of learning as we go in each country how that builds. I guess by year 3, normally it's more, and that's what we want to be. We want to be driven by the local team, by the local runners, and any internationals flying in, there has to be an exponentially big impact to make that justifiable. And we're getting there. But it's not overnight.
No, well, obviously, no, like you say, it's a bit of a culture shift as well. We've touched there a little bit on the idea of sort of flying to international races. So as part of, so you work towards the UN global goals. And obviously sustainability is, intermingled in all those goals. Have you done any other things sort of specifically as a company thinking with regards to sustainability? I
think what's been super interesting, there's someone we're working with in Jordan called Jeff Lawton, who's sort of one of the godfathers of permaculture and regenerative agriculture. And so we've been he's got a project there called Greening the Desert. And one of his famous quotes is, I'm probably going to bastardize it here. But all the problems of the world can be solved in the garden. And I grew up with one of my closest friends being living on a farm, and him telling me all these different things as we were sort of 16, 17, 18, walking on long walks. He was telling me about permaculture, and I have to confess, I was a bit like, cool, Tim. But I've had to eat my words a few times now, because the more I've seen it, and actually what we've seen that I think is most interesting is all the different projects we work in, no matter what global goal they're going, they're like, is their headline.
Yep.
Coming back to the land, it's coming back to how we as humans connect with the earth. And that's something that's been a fundamental transition in these 6 years of doing impact. It's sort of night and day in terms of when we first started. There was dabbles of that, but now every single project, whether it's quality education with youth in Guatemala, where they actually are doing a huge amount in terms of sustainable communities, and when you ask the youth the problems that they're facing, it's the same. So I think there's a few elements of what you're saying there. I mean, ultimately, every project that we're doing is now sustainability focused, and that's not by design. That's by the fact that that's the way the world is shifting, and that's exciting. That's really awesome. And then in terms of actually our events, during the race week, we've been doing a lot around the food. In particular, we want and this is something we're really excited about in Mull. We really want food should be telling a story. So everything we do has to tell a story. Everything has to be justifiable. We've been carbon neutral since day one, but that I don't think that's a nice thing to say, but I don't think that's
you need to go further.
I don't think we can say hand on heart that cool, we're cool with this. No, it has to have an exponentially large impact. So the fundraising that comes into the projects, that's obviously got to be a huge part of it. Then how we deliver the events, how we talk about where we're sourcing the food from. We've gone an almost entirely vegetarian menu now at all of our races, as much as possible, or at least it's sort of vegetarian with. We used to have it at the beginning where it was big meat buffet or whatever it was. Now it's vegetarian buffet, and you can add a bit of meat at the end if you want, and that's specifically chosen from within the local community. And again, just we consider everything against that. We've up until again, these are the challenges that race directors are facing. We will go back to no single-use plastic on course. Recently, the 2 races in Guatemala, when you've got COVID restrictions, you can't all be feeling. So we've gone back to no single-use plastic on course, and every single element of, if we're getting this for this one race, is that justifiable? And 9 times out of 10 it's not.
No.
So things like bib numbers, that suddenly becomes a question of, do we really need them? Why are we having them? We won't be having them in Scotland. That'll be the first race I've done without them. So it's like, okay, cool. So how do you safely manage a course without bib numbers? Because they are fundamentally just used for that one moment. If they're just used for that race day,
you're going to find a way around.
Are they essential? Yes. Okay, cool, fine. Are they? And I think that that's also about helping runners to understand that we need to change our expectations of races. We've gotten so used to just turning up and everything just being like this, and then you just look at the waste on a big road race. Look at the race there, and I think that that's something that we want to do with our races, is actually just push it a bit further. And just say, cool, we don't think we need to do this. Let's guinea pig it out with you guys tomorrow. And bear with us on this. And I think that that's what, because we're not looking to be the biggest, and we're not even looking to be the best races. We're just looking to have the most impact with our races. It's like, cool, we're going to test this out. You guys may not like it, and let us know, how we can get it better. And then we can then use that as a blueprint for other races and say, hey, well, we did it this way, and honestly, it didn't work.
It didn't work, for sure.
And it was like, that was that. So I think that part of what we like to do is just test out new ideas and concepts and be quite innovative in how we're looking at the sustainability within the race week itself.
It is good. It's really good to be sort of daring in that way, because I do think that does hold people back sometimes, of thinking this is not going to work. My runners are not going to, this is not going to happen. So I think it's good that you are kind of pushing that in that way and being prepared to experiment and have it maybe not work.
I think it's hard when you've got a few thousand people coming, and I think this is something that's often overlooked with races, and I've noticed it more in the last 6 months than any other time for race directors. It's a hard time. I think people have had a lot of deferred races and postponements, and now they're coming to races. I've found there's an energy that's a bit more expectant of race directors, and I feel we need to remember that behind every race is someone who's
Working very hard.
Yeah, working absolutely their absolute best. Event delivery is tough. You bring in anybody who's never delivered an event, who's a project manager and doing this, and then you put them in an event situation, and it's not harder, it's just totally different. And the energy of being out there and waiting for the runners to come back and all of that is demanding on race directors. And so when it comes to, as we transition, we need to transition, we all need to be better, but we also need to runners themselves. I think it's really important that those attitudes of the past I help engage race directors to make those moves, when actually, if your livelihood depends on it, if your kids, you've got kids, I mean, all of these different things, right? I think these need to be, there's a human factor to races. And maybe that's a bit too deep for well,
no, I mean, I think I was just thinking we're probably preaching to the converted here, aren't we? Because I imagine if someone's watching a Trees Not Teas video, they're probably on board. But yeah, for the wider kind of thing, no, I think that's very fair. Fair point. Yes. So just, you're a runner. And this is why you got into this whole thing in the first place. Do you feel like you have made any changes for yourself personally? Have you changed anything about the way you run, anything about the way you do things personally to try
from a sustainability perspective?
Yes.
The most important thing I think I do is find local races. And go support local races. I don't have any aspirations or goals to do the big races that I don't feel are as sustainable as the ones that are being done by. But I just signed up. I'm going back to Pembrokeshire. I just signed up to one that's done by a run club down there and around a reservoir, and so I think very hard about the races I'm signing up to now, and you look and you see, okay, things like, do they offer, it's just going to sound like an advert for you, but do they offer Trees Not Teas? Because if they don't, then they're potentially like not thinking hard enough about what they're doing. And then in terms of how I think about my nutrition, how I think about my food, and I think it's all about my lifestyle as well, in terms of being really conscious of the decisions I'm making. And that's sustainability and everything. Okay, so I work a lot in Central America. There is a vast impact on the decisions we make, in the coffee choices we make, or I don't want to name names, right? The bananas we buy, right? These have a fundamental impact directly into communities. So I think there's the two elements of it. There's the direct sustainability ones, and then there's sort of the indirect decisions as well, in terms of where we're sourcing our food from, both in terms of the sustainability element of the food itself and where it's come from, but also the other thing that is key is about the communities in which it's come from and how those communities are given opportunities. And if you look at Central America in particular, and the concept of food sovereignty, there's no equality there, and if there's no equality and there's no I'm going to get quite academic. That's right. I am actually. I'm in the middle of. I'm just about to finish a master's in industrial development, so this is something that I'm like so pumped up about at the moment. And when you don't have an equitable society, you cannot expect others to pull together in terms of the climate change concept.
No, of course.
You don't have it. So for me, everything about my life is around that opportunity level and around that changing those concepts as well. Because the sustainability and the climate change discussion is holistic, just as the land in Glen Arras is holistic. But sorry, I've gone off.
No, that's great. No, it's interesting. And I was looking at those UN global goals sort of before I was talking to you. And again, that shows the whole picture, doesn't it? This is, it's all that you can't deal with one and ignore the other. So no.
They're all completely intertwined. And because we most of my time I spent with grassroots organizations and all of this, you see this from a totally different discussion. The discussion around climate change is really different in Escuintla in Guatemala than it is in the Isle of Mull. No one's wrong or right. It's just there's different elements to it, and there's different things that we all need to be aware of in that discussion. And I think as well, and what I think is super important, it goes gently back to what we said about race directors, but as a whole is having that grace with people, we're expecting perfection from everybody a lot of the time now,
Yeah.
across a lot of different things. And
yeah,
I think that we all know we're not perfect. We all know that, okay, cool, in one area I'm really good.
Yeah.
So in another area,
not so much.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not.
Yeah.
So, and I think having that grace with ourselves, but also with others, you know, especially in the climate change discussion, I think there's particularly a little bit more edge to it that I think doesn't necessarily bring everybody on board onto the same boat, which is what we need. We need a unifying, and so we kind of get quite aggressive.
No, I think that's a really good and valid point, and a really nice way of putting it. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been really interesting. Impact marathons are just amazing, and it's so exciting to be doing this one in Scotland with you guys.
I mean, and hopefully the start of a really great journey. And we've got a heck of a month of work, and you know, I'm heading up to Mull right now to get going on stuff with Matt, and but you know, it's been such really good fun every time I visit up on Glen Aras, the team. You know, it's totally different challenges to what we face in our everydays. And you know, I grew up with friends on farms, but I'm not a farm land management chap myself, so I learn all the time as well up there. And every time I'm up there, there's new experts just on the land that I'm learning from, and I love that. There's just so much to this discussion, and I think that's what I'm most excited about, seeing how that discussion develops over the weekend.
Yes, and how are you going to bring your participants into that? That's fantastic.
We barely talked about running here, have we?
No, that's fine. No problem. There'll be plenty of opportunity to run when you're up there. I hope it goes fantastically well. I'm sure it will.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.